Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Wireheads podcast. It is I, Emmerron, the guy who shows up here once a week and sometimes in Diamond's chat these days, though big things are happening there. Things are happening, TM. I am very excited. I made a discovery yesterday that is important. We will be talking about that in the near future, I promise, or at least I will be. It's more my thing than it is a Wireheads thing, but very excited, very excited indeed. Of course, joining me as always is my co-host.
Hello everybody, I'm Diamond Dust. For those of you guys who are hanging around after Scuff Citizen, thank you so much. Didn't expect to become a jailbird at the end of the day, but look, negligent manslaughter, it happens.
It does happen.
Anyway,
in a verse where everyone carries guns, like what's bound to happen sometime.
Just don't walk out. Just don't walk out in front of your backup, especially you lawmen. Don't do that.
Yeah.
But of course, I do stuff on YouTube. I do stuff here on Twitch. I even kind of got a Patreon now rolling. Just a quick shout out to Jill, the first patron. Thank you very much. And also to everyone else that's been helping sponsor getting my ass to Gen Con, because your girl's a little trying to get it together. Hello, Noel. But yeah, with that in mind, Emmerron, we have the subject in the box, but
we do.
Could you give us the preamble for how we got here?
I would love to give the preamble for how we got here. So before I do, I just want to make sure everyone is aware, we do have a little sneaky peeky thing coming in Diamond's half of the episode. So if you guys are here now, you're here just when you need to be, because you'll hear us talk about that, but that's on the back half of our show, because of course we want you guys to stick around for the whole thing if we can help it. So in true Rob Barefoot fashion, Rob, if you're listening, thanks for always serving as a positive example of things to do in the streaming space. We will be talking about that then. For now, the preamble as to working with your table. There are two things, actually, and both have happened, at least across my path in the last 2 days, 48 hours-ish. The first was a video that John recently did, which was reading a Reddit post off of the Cyberpunk Red subreddit, talking about a situation with a player, and I'm not going to read from it verbatim. If you want to watch John's video and hear his thoughts on it, I would recommend, doing that, because to me, it represents a larger discussion that I know I've had a few number of times at my own tables and having to navigate that. And this isn't even exclusively a Cyberpunk issue, if we want to call it that. It is a more general TTRPG thing. Subtle Danger, thank you for the sub. So when we talk about this in the context of Red, it's because I think Red, of the systems that I play, is probably one of, if not the most grounded systems that I currently use. And I'm pretty sure, Diamond, you'd probably agree with that take as well. I'd say that Cyberpunk is probably one of the most grounded systems there is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, or at least that's in our circulation.
Grounded in there's some technological developments, but there's no world-bending magic stuff that really happens in Cyberpunk. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the first kind of part of this was this Reddit post. So the Reddit post talked about GM who was asking the subs advice, essentially, on a situation that they found themselves having with one of their players. That player in question was saying, well, I need I want to play a steampunk mecha thing, like mech that's been around for 200 years, And to everyone who is like a cyberpunk purist, by which I mean like it's all the chrome, it's all of the cyberware, it's all of the, you know, Night City aesthetic, it's all that stuff. This would sound, and even the way John responded to it initially, or reacted to it, was like, ooh, yeah, that's probably not the vibe. With that in mind, there were plenty of comments on that post discussing kind of how to navigate that discussion that followed with the player in question. And some people went so far as to identify them as a problem player. And so, Diamond, I'm curious if you've had this discussion. You may or may not have had this discussion with players at your table before. But yeah, I thought you might have. But I'm curious, when you've navigated this discussion, when a player like this kind of shows up out of the woodwork at your table, kind of what is your like approach to that discussion that has to happen once that's occurred?
So, and to clarify, like, I have never, I want to make this very clear and upfront. These people that come to you with these wild, zany ideas are not problem players. If anything, they turn out to be some of the best players you can have at your table.
Yes.
As long as they're open to negotiation.
Yes, that the lack of negotiation is what makes them into a problem player potentially. Even then, that's not a total.
Not the portable particle accelerator, please. No.
Yep. Yeah, Nyla's portable particle accelerator. That is ARM cyberware. Yeah, that's a fun one.
So I've actually had this not so much as like something that was like way out of the vibe, but it was much more someone's backstory kind of tying in some very big, powerful names. And it's just like, well, yes, and like I want to have, you know, in the way they're trying to present this character idea was very much they were trying to play.
Ooh. Hold on, I think oh no, Diamond has gone inverted. Pat, I hope you could still hear me. Something happened here though. Yeah, no, it says, Chad, if you can hear me, say something, please. Because I don't see Diamond's audio box. Well, it looks like kind of her everything broke. So hold on one moment. I'm going to yell down the hall at her. Chat, BRB. All right. So Diamond's going to look a little flatter than she did before.
I'm not flat. I'm just small. Okay.
You 2D. You were 3D before.
Look,
definitionally.
I just didn't pay for my protection fees to keep my 3D-ness, okay? Pay your protection fees.
You lost a whole dimension.
Yes, I did. So, and I feel better than ever.
Yeah. So chat, sorry about that. For those of you who are with us live at the moment, Diamond's computer freaked out a tiny bit and maybe did a reset spontaneously on her. So we're back. We're here. Things did not, in fact, explode. So let's get back to what we were talking about. Thank you all for your patience. I was asking about at your table when you've had players like the one in the Reddit post who have a very different idea, maybe from what the rest of the group or even you as the GM do about either the vibe of the world or like they want to do something that may by some be considered very like outlandish or maybe on the extreme end of things even a little inappropriate. So like what kinds of experiences have you dealt with there and how have you resolved those at your table?
So I suppose in my case, when I look at stuff like this, I had a thought I was running with, but I have lost it.
Yeah.
But when I've had like some players that propose like, hey, can I just be like sentient synthetic nanite swarm? And I'm like, that unfortunately cannot work.
Yeah.
The tech is not at that point. FBCs are possible, they're super expensive, but you can have nanites though. There is cyberware for that. Usually for me, I try to keep things as very like core as possible.
Sure.
But like now, if it's like maybe someone's taste in clothing,
Yeah.
like perhaps they have a very you know, Uncle Buck decides to visit the big city kind of look to them. It's like, oh, there's definitely going to be like you are definitely going to have the Beverly Hillbillies. Like, that's how one of the poser gangs for the primetime players ended up happening, was because of a player that's part of the Beverly Hillbillies.
Oh, that's fun. I dig that.
So find ways to. So from my corner, while I'm usually not one to like stretch out from core, if it seems like it is feasible enough that there is a reasonable spot that they may have been stretching from, find that, propose it to them as this is kind of where, you know, my ground level is.
Right. This is kind of the line. Yeah. No, and I agree for the most part with that take overall. And I don't really disagree with any part of that. I think that that's a pretty good way to navigate that. My thing when I've encountered players like this, I find it's most often true of players who have come out of D&D as their like prime reference point, because in D&D things are like very open-ended, very freeform, right? And there exists long-lived races, there exists you know, things that are maybe a little ridiculous in their you know, on their face, in the way they handle things, but those things all can be fit into like fantasy world and all of that sort of thing, because it's very much a case of like the DM in that instance, whoops, I bumped my mic. The DM in that instance just has to like get flexible, but there's like, because D&D is just so much less grounded, or even like, I mean, you could play settings obviously like Emmerron or Forgotten Realms or whatever have you in that way, but like I just find like D&D's settings by and large are so varied and indeed don't even need to exist for you to play the game, whereas Cyberpunk is a very nuanced version of the real world that they set you in. And I have yet to hear of a Cyberpunk game that totally eschews that setting, right? Like the closest I've heard is some people would rather do like a cyborg cyberpunk kind of hybrid, and they might fuse elements of the city of Psy and Night City together, but like they don't really ever completely abandon, you know, what is by and large urban decay, gang violence, corporate overreach, and you know, overpowering of most of civilization. So when a player comes along like that, that's very much like, I want to do something completely different. I think, again, if the player's open to like negotiation, there's a lot of things you can do. Like they say, oh, I want to do like a minion master kind of thing. You know, I want to have like a bunch of little like bio creatures that I command. Like I want to be king of the rats or some stuff. It's like, okay, so
that is feasible.
That is somewhat feasible. Yeah, like that is like, it's probably a little longer term of a goal than what character creation would let you, but like we have cyber pets now, which is one way of doing that. Another would be you create a bunch of little drones. Maybe you're attacking, you've got a bunch of little drones that you built, and the little drones you've built do the things that you want your character to be able to do. And maybe you're a tech net runner. That's your kind of shtick. The suggestion from the Reddit post, which had the steampunk player that they landed on, was, Night City's having a steampunk revival, and we are going to just aesthetically flavor the aspects of cyberware and your fashion wear and all that stuff after the very Victorian steampunk kind of era that the game doesn't normally go for. And I think that's
youth
totally
of Little
fine.
Europe are like the way I propose is like the youth of Little Europe are kind of having some ideas.
Right. They're going back. They're doing the someone picked up a book of Castle Falkenstein, and all of a sudden everyone's like, check this out, this is the coolest new thing. And it's really like, in cyberpunk's terms, like a good 60 years old at that point almost. So it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. So it's fun to play with that aspect of it. Do not be afraid of aesthetics. If like your players' main hang up is they're like, well, I don't really go for the chrome and stuff. That's why Bohemian exists. That's why Bag Lady Chic exists. Even to a degree, that's why generic chic exists. Like, these are everyman, or, like more of the like wooey esoterica kind of vibe. If that is what you want to be, that's what you can be. Like, yeah.
Like, I've even had someone just be like, I want a suit, but I don't want like a business wear suit.
Yeah.
Now, I was sitting there thinking, like, how would that work? And then, I'd finally seen that, like, there was an image of an actor that was wearing a suit in one of... What is that? Bucket full of popcorn flavored kibble. How can I forget? It's, like, actually one of my favorites from that book. Right. But their suit was labeled as generic chic. So, when I see generic chic, it's very much off the rack, not tailored to you. Like, if you're really trying to make, like, cheap salesman kind of look as a fixer or something like that.
Right.
That is, like, some of the things that your players might come to you with. But Emmerron, I actually have one for you.
Please.
Now, we've talked about this just a little bit.
Okay.
Player of mine, Daredevil is their favorite superhero.
Sure.
Now, in all honesty, Daredevil, compared to a lot of the other Marvel superheroes, or DC, Marvel?
No, he's Marvel. He's Marvel.
Marvel, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like the Daredevil series just seemed like on the very dark side of Marvel.
It does. I get where you'd come off if that was your reference that you're using. Yeah, it feels a little more DC, but it is Marvel. Yeah.
So, June, that was you. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. So, blind character. But when this has been proposed, like I haven't been sure if I'd be willing to offer that. Partially as someone who my vision sucks. That like if I'm not wearing lenses, I might as well just stay where I'm at because bad things might happen otherwise. No, Daredevil is not you. Okay. What do you propose for like someone that is just like, instead of getting cyber eyes, they choose to be blind? Like, how do you work with that in your group?
Yeah, so if someone chooses a disability, some things genuinely are just going to be more difficult, obviously. Like, it's not disability for nothing in a lot of ways. Mobility is one thing. That's one thing where we can play around mobility issues pretty easily because you have spider cyber chairs, or you have all of the other kind of things that between cyber chairs or similar analogs would provide for those sorts of things. Blindness is a lot harder because it's not what Daredevil has goes above and beyond just being blind. He has like echolocation almost. So there are some things that would be interesting, I think, if because I've never had to grapple with this at my table as like a point of practice. But my theory on it would be inevitably, obviously, if you're shooting a gun, that is going to have penalties. Like, you know, you're gonna always kind of be firing at a -4 probably, because you're always firing into darkness or, you know, smoke, or that penalty applies no matter what, because you're always listening for your enemy and firing in their direction, but there's a chance that you just miss straight up. And you might, for all we know, you might be like a crack shot like Kane or something like that, just from John Wick 4, who can just still hit the shots. That could happen. And maybe you practiced firing your gun blind your whole life, and you're good enough at it that like your disability largely doesn't hold you back. That is one side of the fiction that you could discuss. Another, though, could very well be you get a sonar implant, right? And now all of a sudden you or get a tech upgraded one that sort of does the Daredevil thing, where like it gives you like your retinal, you know, what does exist of your retinal nerves. It allows you to still feed that data back in, so you have like semi-sensory input from your vision, since blindness in a lot of cases isn't like you're seeing black. It's some people can still see shapes, some people still see color, but it's very much like your vision is so deeply impacted that doing anything that requires visual stimuli is functionally impossible for you, or at the barest minimum incredibly difficult. So that is something where I think that would be how I would start things. And if that player, usually what I find with players who want there to be some level of adversity or disability to their character from the word go, the thing that they like playing is the idea of either breaking from that problem or embracing it. And I think that a player who wants to do that needs to understand that, one, you know, here are the negatives that will impose upon you. Here are some ideas for how we might work around doing that. And you know, maybe they've already got like a little tech gadget that's like 20 eddies or something, that like when a you know, your agent has a program on it to identify when someone has a gun drawn, and it throws a brief chirp when your sights are aligned. So your -4 turns into a -2, because now you've got a little more confidence with the aim that you're taking at the darkness, so to speak here. But like that sort of thing, we want to talk about, okay, so like, why do you want to play a blind character? Like, you know, what is your motivation behind doing that? Is there a particular story that you want to tell? Is there a particular thing that you want to embody? Like, what is the rationale here? Especially if they themselves are not blind, because it's something where like that is a very deliberate choice. Then you're not role playing like lived experience by and large. You are role playing something beyond a simple disability that like you are also you know, experiencing. So that's more where then we have that discussion, I think, because disability, in my mind, needs to be respected, obviously, because it's like not something where you know, disabled people, whether, or you know, people with impairments visually, mobily, like however have you, those impediments don't stop you from doing things. It just makes certain things harder to do. But I obviously want to be able to respect that. And so if the player has a purpose behind their decision to role play whatever they're doing, then yeah, 100%, like I want to respect that. Otherwise, you know, I would just point out to them like, okay, well, these are negatives, because obviously you're playing someone who doesn't have the ability to see. So like doing anything that involves sight, like shooting your gun or you know, judging distances for like jumps across gaps, things like that, that's going to be much more difficult for you, right? That's going to require you to be a different kind of character than you maybe normally would be, even if your role matched and maybe some of your skill allocations matched what someone else might be running. You know, like that's going to feel very different for you. And maybe that's the point. And if that is the point, then, you know, more power to you. We'll play it. I have no problem running it. It just, you know, that has to be part of it. There's not really, in my mind, a lot of room to negotiate the fact that those problems don't exist. It's more that how are you now going to overcome them? And I think that overcoming problems is a big part of what makes TTRPGs appealing in the first place. In Cyberpunk in particular, does a really great job of, like, I think showcasing and really bringing together some of those things for players to then interact with. So yeah, that's kind of my breakdown on that. But like, what's kind of your take then on doing stuff like that? Because I know obviously I've been part of one of your campaigns where someone had mobility issues, but I don't think I've ever.
So in reference to Bishy in particular, because Bishy had talked about it on stream when we were building Little Miss.
Yeah.
Little Miss was, you know, had the same condition that Bishy had. I'm trying to remember if it was sickle cell anemia. They had a blood condition that made like mobility tough for them.
Yeah.
So, and I was willing to work with that, but when we come to those things, sometimes consulting people where it is a part of their everyday life, where, you know, one of my players came to me. Now, mind you, I am very nearsighted that if I don't have corrective lenses, everything is a blur. I can kind of see shapes, but they're like blobs.
Right.
So, you know, like having that discussion where it's like, okay, you might be able to see something, but it might not be where you're exactly looking at it, or something along those lines. And also on top of that, one of the other ones that I have had brought to me, and I am still kind of thinking this one over, and I don't think any of the players in question of that group are watching this, but if you are, you won't know who is who. One of them wants to be a clone that Biotechnica actually perfected.
That's fine.
Now, given I cloning tech is something that's part of the cyberpunk, you know, genre that, like, we don't really see it in Cyberpunk.
We do.
With the capital C.
We do.
We see it. Do we see it again? Because, like, the only one I know of is Biotechnica had a clone that lived for 11 minutes.
Cloned limbs are an active part of Red. That, like, if you lose an arm,
I'm talking about full walking, talking replicants.
Yeah, well, but we know if this is the tech they're selling to the public, it's the same thing that you would say about like the military, right? It's like, if this is what they're showing off in public, the rumor is that they're 10 years ahead of that in private, right? Like, where they things are secretive and plans are unreleased. So that I take maybe not 10 years, but, you know, whatever they're willing to show to the public, that's all the black projects and stuff that they've got buried underneath their you know, HQ and whatever, that could crawl out at any moment. That's definitely something that would be interesting, and I think it's an interesting tale worth telling. But it doesn't, in my mind, that doesn't at all extend beyond the reach of what Cyberpunk has in its universe, or at least its realm of possibility.
Because, I mean, I know we got like the twins in 2077. Are they twins, or are they like actual carbon copies of one person?
You talking about the fighters?
Yes.
They have cyberware that lets them do that. So they are you know, actual twins, but they were so close together in terms of their bond to one another and it's kind of suggested that this is a practice that others do, but it's like fringe.
Shepard
it's
and
very
Gustav
taboo.
also have that.
Well, I don't know if they have this exact same thing. It's probably similar tech, but it's very much that like synchronizer that they have, which allows, and that's where they say like we're not just two people, we are one person. Despite being in two bodies, we're one person, one mind. And so that is what that cyber is letting them do, is that they share a neural net essentially. In a way, it's what I think Jacinda Hidalgo is going after through Gestalt consciousness. That was like the whole inspiration behind the Neuroport and everything. This is what it was built to facilitate, was people being able to do that. So yeah, they're not a Biotechnica experiment. They very well could have been a Rockland experiment, though, or at least whatever Rockland developed into after the 40s and 50s.
So when I look at when I look at the clone and like the matter of the clone, I was sitting here just like, how do we create a life path for someone that, you know, came out the bag like day one as a full-grown human? Because I was just like, because like, of course we could take the route where by the way, actually no spoilers, take the route of a certain thing that, you know, I had been tuned into, where that might have been the case, but I don't feel that quite grasps what they were doing. So it's just like, okay, well, we're gonna take one out of another game that I've been running to kind of figure out like how to make your life path, because it's in Blade Runner themselves. Yes, I know. Here I am bringing up Blade Runner on a Cyberpunk Red podcast. I don't know. Yell at me or whatever. But we used like the replicants like memories to kind of get an idea of exactly how much detail would their background have. So they don't have a prized person that, or they have one, but it's not like an immediate person. They don't like, there's certain things that like that they consider important to them that would seem very out of line for someone else in their like in their walk of life.
Sure.
And they don't even have an actual like childhood upbringing.
Yeah.
Like that's been left like quiet. Like there's that.
Yeah. I mean, the really interesting thing would be is if they had implanted memories of like, and that replicant kind of thing would stem into that potentially. But yeah.
Like they do have it, but like it's obscured to everyone except that player. So like that player could call on things that they might remember, and everyone's just like, "What the fuck are you talking about? That never happened," or "You were there when that happened." And well, we'll see. We'll see how the clone does.
Yeah. No, completely fair. There was something so there's some that Societal Danger brought up in chat that I wanted to highlight.
Oh, do we have shared chat on?
We should, yeah. Because I can see the shared chat on my part of things here. It says it's enabled, so yeah, I think it should be, unless somehow something went wonky.
Not on my end, but I can still see chat.
Yeah. Okay.
But I can't see June in my chat.
Let me do this. Let me end shared chat and let me re-enable it. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah. Let me do that just so that we're chilling. Because I was like,
you want to stay blind with that cyber. Tactile boost was another thing I was thinking of.
Yeah.
That
tactile and sonar. But the thing that I wanted.
Hearing.
Yeah. Enhanced hearing could work too. The thing I wanted to bring up was the thing that he said a little, it's actually been a little bit now, but it's usually a stylistic choice can work in response to what we were talking about with the steampunk character. But even something in setting, even something that is setting viable can become a problem if it clashes with the rest of the team too much. It really depends more on the angle the player is coming from. A media with a flashy body mod can even be an issue if you're a stealthy team who wants to keep activity on the down low. Well, to that I would say, and this is kind of why I wanted to bring this up, because that is why we have session 0, where we want to talk about, okay, what kind of a campaign are we playing? And then you hope that the players all have enough of a grasp on what they all want, because we've had that discussion, that they're not going to play a character who intentionally sabotages the group's vibe, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that to say, by the way, that it means that a stealth team can have nobody with low stealth. Like, there absolutely can be a stealthy guy, or a guy on a stealthy team rather, that has no stealth. You know, and that maybe that person is there for a different reason, right? Maybe they're the bait. Maybe they're sending ahead of the rest of their group constantly so they can fast talk their way through whatever the fuck, you know, they need to distract guards or whatever, while the rest of the crew circles around back and does their part of the gig, right? Like there are ways to still make that work. What it comes down to is an element that I think games like D&D actively work against in a lot of their choices mechanically, and in the way that certain groups become idolized for this. And I think like a lot of people don't recognize that the core of what makes good groups or tabletop RPGs good is collaborative storytelling, by which I mean not just the GM is dictating what's going on, but the players themselves are dictating things that go beyond just the actions of their characters potentially. And while Cyberpunk isn't a great game to illustrate that, because obviously there needs to be, you know, there's a call and response that happens there. Players have a lot of agency in how they interact with the world around them. And the world around them exists more than just the, you know, 45-degree arc in front of their face, right? Like, they can choose to put out a phone call to someone and interact with them. Whereas in more fantasy setting, kind of inspired TTRPGs, that is far less common, right? Like, long distance communication is usually reserved for like emergency missives and things like that. It's not generally done as like a very casual thing, right? So in that way, players can kind of help push the story in a certain direction by deciding, oh, we like this character, we want to interact with them more, I'm going to call them in my free time, and we're going to have a discussion about this thing that I want to do with them. And then it becomes a, well, yeah, we'll navigate that, right? I had my Monday group that Diamond's part of this week totally throw me for a loop when they decided to take a guy that had showed up as an NPC as kind of the objective of the previous mission, and they all got really suspicious about this guy, and they wanted to interrogate the crap out of him for a project he was working on, and the fact that like he wasn't delivering stuff on time, and they made it a whole gig that I did not prep. And it was like very, very like open-ended, very collaborative. Everyone's throwing different ideas on the table. And, you know, we're just kind of rolling off of whatever the vibes are, right? And so if your group has done a good job of establishing itself as a group who is open to doing that, you'll find that your games are, I think, in a large part more fulfilling and more enjoyable, because everyone is participating actively. No one is zoning out on their phone. No one is like failing to pay attention or falling asleep at the table because they aren't doing enough. It's very much like everyone's got their head in the game. Everyone's paying attention. Everyone's looking for their opportunities to participate and contribute. And there are other games that make it more of a central element. Like Fabula Ultima is one I've discussed on the channel here before. Another is that I've just last night had my first dose of playing. This is the second reason I want to talk about this today. was Daggerheart. Now in Daggerheart, there's no initiative. There is the players and there's the GM. The GM has a resource called Fear that they can use to take actions, while the players can go kind of until they're out of actions to take. But it's all done in this very open, collaborative way, where like there has to be respect on both sides of the table, that the GM isn't going to run away with their fear points and use them maliciously to attack the players, and that the players similarly aren't just going to run away with the empowerment that they have and just like, you know, completely stomp everything because they just want to win, right? Winning is telling a good narrative, not getting out of the combat necessarily. So yeah, that to me is really what working with your table means. It's that idea that your story is not so pigeonholed into itself that you have to have it your way and your way only as the GM. You have to be willing to like discuss things actively with your players, not just in session 0, but like all the time being open to that dialogue of, well, what if I wanted to do X right now? And being okay with telling that player more often than not, yeah, sure, let's see what happens. You've got the time to do that. The only time I really have said no to requests like that is when, well, you probably don't have the time to do that right now, but we can absolutely do that the next time you have time. That is like the only reason I really have that I regularly say no to things. I find it's much more interesting when the players are given that free reign to like, yeah, let's open a can of worms. I don't care. Like, it's interesting, right? Like, we might as well have an interesting game. I think that's much better from a gameplay standpoint than not having that.
Yeah. So when players, I suppose is my, I don't know. Are we coming up on time? Because I bet some of these people are chomping at the bit to know what's coming out.
We had technical issues. We've got like 10-ish minutes that we.
10 minutes. All right.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So, I suppose my big 2 cents on the matter. When players come to you as a GM with this idea that they have that might fall outside the setting, this is an opportunity for you as a GM to find a way to either negotiate a reasonable character idea that would fit in your setting, or especially for those of you who have a much more flexible setting, to find a way to sew that into the grander scheme of things. At the end of the day, when we come to the table, we're bringing ideas to create a collaborative story. The characters are very much not just the actors in a show, but the ideas of the players being pushed into the narrative.
Yep. Player characters are tools, and they're the tools that the players get to exercise their agency and their will upon the story that you're all telling together. And so you have to, one, give them room to do that, but 2, take the opportunity as GM to view those characters' stories, their relationships, their life paths as the same kinds of little throwaway tools that I think, you know, we've seen it happen before on both of our streamed games, where like you throw some little doodad in at like the beginning of the campaign session, like 2 or 3, and then like near the end of the campaign they bring it back up and they're like, and I have this, and they're going to play that like a trump card. And like, I think GMs, especially in games like Cyberpunk that are very drenched in narrative and have a very rich character creation system, which heavily elaborates the character's place in the world and their background, their childhood, all of that we should use those elements as GMs in that same manner, where we think creatively about how could this get applied into the thing I want to do. Because there's our meta narrative that maybe has little to nothing to do with the characters' backstories at face value, right? And then we want to figure out from there, okay, this is my idea, or in the case that you're running something pre-written like Tales of the Red, like this is my idea, or this is the script. Now, how do I take advantage of different elements of this and weave the characters' backstories up into it and make that feel more personally driven to them, rather than it being just a, yeah, so it doesn't really matter that you're like the son of a powerful megacorp. Like, you're, gonna go off and do this edge running thing. Like, you need to make it personal. That's what makes Cyberpunk so unique, is being able to make that personal. And I feel like there's times, even where I fail to do that enough, but it's very much like something that I feel like doesn't always get discussed or used as much as it should be. So yeah. And then societal danger, respond to our earlier thing with using acting to societally manipulate in place of stealth works, and often works well. Inter-party conflict can be very fun and interesting. It mostly depends on the intention behind it. Talking is usually the solution. Yes, open communication is like 99% of the time the thing that you'll find the most success from, I think, if you are if you're trying to have a more engaged and collaborative table. So yeah, that is my kind of take on that. I think there's a lot to learn from games like Fabula Ultima, like Daggerheart, that place a heavy amount of power in players' hands in terms of negotiating agency or what the scene is doing. A great example from, again, earlier this week, I run a Fabula Ultima game that normally is on Thursday nights, that I have a group of 3 players in right now, and one of them picked up some cursed coins, and I started describing the curse, and initially I'm just like, this is a curse that's going to sap his strength. It's going to make him a little sluggish, it's going to make him a little slow. And the player says, because there's a system in Fabula Ultima called Fabula Points, which lets you restructure the narrative. It kind of works like luck in Cyberpunk does. And we kind of have an element of this now with Flash of Luck that can operate similarly. But the thing that he did was he said, I'm a neo-human. In other words, he's like a really big, like evolved human. He looks larger than most other people. He's stronger than most other people. And he has a power to upsize his dice and things like that in return for narrative consequence coming from me. So what he decided to do with his Fabula point here was nothing to benefit himself. It was instead, I want this curse to be because I am who I am. I want it to reflect upon some flaw of my character or some latent thing that is inherent to the type of human I am, this superhuman, if you will. And I'm like, oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, spend your point. I'll totally allow that. And the game rewards you for spending points at the end of the session, regardless of what you spend them on. So this isn't a bad thing for him. But because of that, he retextured the entire scene and even the dungeon that they were in when he did this into being a very personal thing for him. And I thought that was just so cool, and I think it's something we need to see more of in all TTRPGs, is that kind of willingness to say, well, GM, what if this? And that the GM then can say, that's a great idea. Let's do that. Or at least let's play with that. Let's talk about that for sure. I think that is such a powerful thing, and it's a great source of joy for me when my players bring that up. And I'm sure that others, if you've had it happen, it's true for you. If you hadn't, it's something that I think once it does, you'll understand what I'm talking about when I say it's one of the greatest things ever.
I mean, also, as a note to GMs about your newer players coming in, where they might propose something that might seem a little out of place.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for example, if, you have someone showing up just being like, well, yeah, but I have a Malorian Arms 3516. That, maybe not.
Right. You're not going to get freebies.
However, I wouldn't be opposed if you were to have a very heavy pistol that was styled as such, and you're trying to, maybe it's just kind of a thing you do where you make semi-realistic types. They're a tech that does a lot of, like, cosplay is their hobby in game, and it's like, yeah, I could see you making a Malorian Arms 3516 out of, some cheap pistol, so that way, it's an affordable prop. But I'm not handing you a 10,000 Eddie pistol.
Right. Yeah. Riley Fatagan, yeah. Oh, hey, I've done exactly that.
Lux, I did not mean to offside call you. No, because no. You're a fixer. You're not a tech. Anyway, but also this person here does make some really cool actual prints. They're the one that made the Shingen.
Oh yeah, that thing's awesome. Very cool stuff. So I mean IRL, yeah. But hey, being an IRL tech is even cooler than being one in a tabletop. I can't do that shit. That's incredible.
But
yeah, go ahead.
Do we have any? But I suppose as a last thought, with anything that's just out of place, you never know. It might work. If it doesn't work, there is definitely a bridge that can get you from point A to point B.
Yeah, I think any discussion that you have around something, especially if it's really experimental and you're not sure how it'll pan across the rest of the group or something, again, you should be having these discussions as a group when something is on the edge like that. I think that having an open discussion amongst everybody is the best way to handle that and kind of cut things off at the pass before they become too much out of the bounds of what you want to have at your table. But I think all of those discussions, open or not, have the caveat, and definitely should be disclosed as having the caveat that, hey, we'll try this for, the next session or whatever. We will give this a go and we will see what we think about it. And if it doesn't work, then know that we will, have to rediscuss this and just kind of come back around and make sure that it fits in with the rest of the setting, the fiction, whatever, and that we aren't way out of bounds with this. So think about the text maker ability and their ability to invent stuff. The book's pretty clear that we need to keep a door open where that can always be renegotiated. This is no different. You just have to be open to having those discussions with your players if you're a GM, and players if you are proposing something that the GM says, well, that's a little beyond either the scope or the sort of vibe of what I want to go for with the thing that I'm running and helping make here. You have to be willing to hear that no, or if they say yes, but we need to, scale it back or whatever, you have to be open to hearing that discussion if you want to play with that group, most likely. Because that's just the way that it is. Like, it's not just it's not one player's show when you get into group settings like that. Everyone is involved. And so everyone has to consent to that if it's something that extends a bit over the edge of the lines that Cyberpunk draws for itself. And those lines are there to be drawn over as long as you do it in a way that makes sense, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But I digress. So with that said, chat, if you're here with us live or if you're watching us on Spotify, shortly we're going to be transitioning over to the next topic, which is a lovely little sneak peek at a new DLC.
The big reveal.
The big reveal. So, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm not going to spoil anything more than that on this half of the episode. You're going to go to the link down in my description below. You're going to go over to Diamond's channel, and we're going to listen over there to what we have to discuss on that. Because I promise you, when we got this in our inboxes earlier this week, both of us about lost it and said, oh my God, this is incredible. So be there. Chat, Spotify. We'll see you in about 2 seconds on the other half here. But for those of you who are on YouTube, I hope all of you have a good morning, evening, or afternoon wherever you're in the world. Stay healthy, stay safe. And until we see you again, peace.